When they drew up contracts with interest rates, with flexible interest rates, I think they knew in the beginning that these problems were going to come back later on, where folks weren't going to be able to afford the mortgages as the interest rates increased. It put a lot of people in situations where they were taking food out of refrigerators, taking kids out of higher education. They're not able to afford college anymore. And it is making a really, really bad situation worse.
The banks engaged in what was a criminal conspiracy to charge more to the blacks and Hispanics. The banks got together, backed the Bush administration to block the state prosecutions of racial lending in order to exploit and charge more to the minorities.
These are loans which were made by one of the major lenders in the city and in this country, Wells Fargo, in which Wells Fargo targeted minority communities in the city, put borrowers into loans that they could not afford, put borrowers into loans that were of the subprime variety, therefore more expensive and less advantageous to the borrowers.
Hiding predatory lending practices in the small print of complex financial products was only ever going to enrich one set of interests.
Many of the communities in which African Americans live in the city were establishing momentum. There was development activity that was occurring. We were seeing signs of vitality in many of these communities, and the results of the Wells Fargo foreclosures and the subprime lending practices of that lender and others has significantly impaired that progress and brought it to a halt.
Is this system we call capitalism really capitalism? In a capitalist system, government is supposed to be small, but today the state is more bloated and invasive than it's ever been. Individuals and companies are supposed to operate in a free market. Good enterprise is rewarded with profit, and flawed enterprise with failure. But during the 2008 banking crisis, the people saw the Western economic system divided in a way they were told could never happen.
Socialism for the rich, capitalism for the poor. And in America, for example, the banks that got in trouble got bailed out by the government. That's socialism. And people are arguing against socialism in America, and yet it's probably the most socialist country in the world right now.
We have a system which isn't even a proper capitalist system. Rich people make mistakes that they don't get punished. Poor people make mistakes that they get punished. Yeah? Or even worse, that they don't make any mistake and they are forced to pay for the mistakes of the rich.
They don't come in the heart of it. Like, you in the heart of it, so you see. They don't really see the struggle if they don't come in the heart of it. They see the outside of it. That's like looking at the cover of a book and seeing the outside of a book, but if you don't go inside the book, then you'll never know what the book about. So they're not worrying about nobody else but themselves. And I think it's wrong, because if they come in the heart of it and they see it, they'll be willing to help.
What happened in Baltimore is just one example of what is happening all around the world. One way to frame this injustice is by branding it a race issue. But when we look really closely, we can see that there is something at play here that transcends race.